If you're talking, I don't hear you. I'm going to take a quick break before we start.
I can't hear you, Sam. Sam, there's no sound for you. I mean, that works for me. No, I'm kidding. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, you can. You can hear me. You want to reopen us? Oh, wait, I think I might have heard something. Say something. No. Got it. How are you, Heiner? Well, Sam's going to another machine.
I'm fine. And Mr. Awesome is also here?
He's taking care of some last minute requirements, I believe.
Okay, I also have something. Oh, Mr. Awesome.
Mr.
That's
Olson?
you, Barry. That's you.
Olson?
You're
Yes,
awesome.
Oh, awesome. Oh,
you're
awesome.
awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, don't forget to be awesome. Not Olson, awesome. Did Sam figure out what his audio issue was?
No, he's moving to another machine.
Yeah, I was going to suggest he open another connection on another device and use the audio on the other device. But he's going to have one for audio and one for video, I guess. It's complicated. I had a little glitch. You know, I'm running, this is a really old Macintosh, and it's so old that it can only run El Capitan, which is an older version of the operating system. Turns out, when you go to websites that have the HTTPS secure thing, the security descends from a set of certificates that authorize that it's a valid site. The certificate for this machine had expired, and it took me a couple of days to research it and find out how to override it. So now I can use the web and not get, this site is unsafe. You can't look at this site. Wikipedia was unsafe. USA Today was unsafe. Whole bunch of websites it wouldn't let me go to.
I also feel very unsafe.
Yeah. It was really an obscure issue. And the fix was obscure. But I just fixed it. There's Sam on his other machine.
But he's muted.
There he goes. Nope, we still don't hear you, Sam.
Uh-huh, gotcha.
I knew you would. No, I knew you were doing that. You know why? Because you didn't mouth real words. You just went
You can lip read?
a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I can't lip read, at least.
I wasn't looking, but I think you said so. Go ahead, say it again. Start from the beginning. Nah, I can't make it out. But I can make out gibberish because that has a clear
Just
nothingness to it.
Random moving of them.
Right.
Okay, were we on the whole Facebook downage?
No, we haven't talked about anything really. Well, Barry's issue with an outdated.
Certificate. Yeah, I have an older operating system and my site certificate, root certificate had expired. And it took me, well, what's today's date? The
I have no
9th.
idea.
It took
Today's
me,
the
it
9th.
took me a week and a half to diagnose it and fix it.
What operating system you're on? Windows?
No, it's El Capitan because I have an
Oh, Mac.
older
Okay.
Mac that doesn't upgrade after El Capitan.
So did you want to talk about the Facebook outage, Sam?
Nah.
Okay.
But I'm actually more interested in a different topic, but we can get through that after some check-ins if people would like to check in. Or not.
I'll save mine for a checkout.
Okay, so let's see. We got 8 people here, 4 people on video.
Now we have 5 people.
Or Heiner's
Six.
here.
We have 2
Six.
duplicates.
Heiner's here twice. Okay. And I'm here twice.
Sam is on twice, Heiner's on twice,
Okay.
everybody else is on once.
All right. All right.
Who's on first?
Okay. Anybody want to check in? Okay, I'll check in. I had a pretty nice surprise this week. I've been working for more than a couple decades, as some of you may be able to tell. But I got an impromptu meeting on Monday. And I didn't realize it was in the flow of regular adjustments. But I got a nice pop from my boss. I'll forget about that. So
Oh, you mean a raise by pop? You mean a raise?
yeah.
Okay, congratulations.
The word was pop. I never heard the word
Yeah, I
pop
never heard it either.
to mean a raise.
Yes.
Anyway, so that happened. And so I feel less in danger of being fired on a daily basis.
And you can pay your mortgage.
Well, you know, there's a number of things that happen to make that a whole lot better. One is, as of the end of May, I'm no longer paying support payments. That makes a big difference.
Oh, that's huge.
You should see what kind of support payments I was making. Yes. California is not kind to ex-husbands. Or current husbands looking to become ex.
Oh, you're not even divorced yet, legally?
We signed the papers on June 12th. They just have to get like officially recorded. And that takes months in the California system.
And especially during COVID.
That probably has something to do with it. Yeah, I'm dying to see the actual confirmation so that I can change my official status.
Is there anybody here who has not had a failed relationship at least once in their life?
Yeah, that person could make billions doing workshops. Or not, because then they think everything they do works.
I think that person would have some serious issues. To have never been in a failed relationship, that means that you probably haven't ever been in a relationship.
A hermit that's never had a failed relationship.
Heck, I'm not even sure I could have a good relationship with myself. There's still going to be issues that come up.
Yeah, you have your own inner demons to fight with.
Yeah. Take me out on Friday. No, I want to stay home.
You're not being present for me.
You're not listening to me.
You're not good enough to be in a relationship with yourself.
Let me express my feelings without interrupting. Stop trying to fix me. Sorry, I'm having too much.
Those are legitimate gripes.
It happens all the time.
See, this is why I would not acknowledge my legitimate gripes and I would have a bad relationship with myself. Okay, I'm just kidding. Come on.
I'm
Okay.
not good enough to have a relationship with myself.
Yeah, find somebody better. In fact, there was a meme that went around this week, something like man brings a woman home to his mother and says, "Mom, this is my new girlfriend." And she says, "Can't you do any better for yourself?" And he says, "Come on, Mom, get off my back." And she says, "Hey, I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to her." All right. Anybody with topics to introduce, or can I launch in?
I think Heiner said he had something on his agenda.
Heiner, what's on your mind?
Maybe not. Oh, he turned it on.
No, not really.
Oh,
I
my
just
mistake.
came in. We kicked off our Earthbeat tour to yesterday in Luxembourg. So we are quite busy, and I just came in, and I'm going to listen for a moment. Everything is fine.
Okay. So I may be on a kick the last few weeks, but I think what I was really curious about, and this is a topic that's been introduced by Alexander, this is a topic that's been introduced by Barry, it has been a topic that has been introduced by me, etc. And other people clearly, have thought long and deeply about this. But it's actually more and more prominent in my awareness, is the importance of thought. The importance of being able to think. The importance of being able to think in a constructive way. The importance of being able to think without being sloppy. The importance with being able to express one's thoughts.
I'll do the door for you.
Okay, thanks. The ability to express thoughts that actually aren't just driven by feelings. Now, that to me potentially could come across like it's denigrating feelings. But in my view, feelings are a way of signaling that one needs to actually change perspective or to change behavior or to change thinking. But once it's done that, I think you do need to bring some more considered thought, thinking, deciding, modeling, acting, behaving. So I am really, really curious about how emotions hijack thinking, and how, is there ever a case where emotions are better than thought? That, emotions say, don't think, just feel, and just act from there. Is there ever such a scenario? And I'm very curious to see if we have any such experience. That's my introduction to this thinking, and there's about one or two stages I'd like to go beyond that. But that's the reason I think I want to bring this topic up over.
The answer is yes. Go ahead, Stacy.
I just want to say, I wouldn't want to confuse, because what you just said at the end, I wouldn't want to confuse emotions with feeling and intuition. Like there's a difference, because you sort of have to clear your emotions to feel what, that intuition, so that it's a little murky the way you put the question.
I like your clarification, Stacy. I do think that intuition is not just emotions. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's not emotions at all, I don't think. There may be emotions attached to it.
A lot of people mix those up.
Yes.
In my opinion.
I'm sorry, Barry, go ahead. I just really wanted to separate that.
Yeah, a good place to resolve Sam's point is to go back to a discipline like mathematics or philosophy, which is really very rigorous kind of thinking, as precision thinking as you can imagine, and as a discipline. And Sam, your father was a mathematician, and you studied plenty of mathematics. It's not a secret that mathematicians make errors in reasoning. It's very common. And most of the work is trying to find and fix the errors in reasoning. And in philosophy, you end up with dilemmas. You end up with two thoughts which are mutually inconsistent, mutually contradictory. And this can happen also in mathematics, where you have two lines of reasoning and they don't come to the same conclusion. And so you end up vexed and perplexed, confused or surprised or bewildered or whatever. And the emotion is the clue that alerts you to that something's amiss in your thinking. And, you know, it's argued that one thought in 20 is precise and correct, and 19 thoughts out of 20 have a deficiency, a flaw, a bug, an error in them. And so we spend a lot of our time trying to figure out what the hell's wrong with our thinking. Why is our thinking, our expectations not being met? Why we think something's going to happen, and what happens is unexpected, and we're surprised or disappointed or disillusioned or despondent. So those emotions are a very important clue. They're like the idiot lights on your dashboard. They tell you that something's gone wrong. They don't necessarily tell you exactly what's gone wrong, but they're the first clue that something's gone awry in your logic, in your thinking. Go ahead, Sam, or Stacey was first, sorry.
Actually, let me ask a meta comment. I just tried to introduce a topic. Is it of interest? And do other people have other topics that they'd like to lay on the table?
It's of interest to me. This is my favorite topic.
And it's my research.
One of my favorite.
And I think it's a block. It's a
Sorry?
very common block that I'd like to.
And that's what my comment about it was going to be, is that one of the things that triggers emotions is when we're questioned about something we're talking about. And if it were more commonplace and it was routine, that's what we want, you know, it wouldn't trigger those emotions, because it wouldn't signal we're wrong, which brings up all these emotions. It would be, this is how we think. This is how we process.
Thanks,
Josh.
Josh.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm interested in the topic. I've kind of talked it to death recently, but it is a great topic. I just wanted to bring up, after talking it to death, what I came up with and what I learned was there's some people that just want to know things, and there's other people that are okay not knowing things, meaning there's Gnostics and there's mystics. And the mystics are like, well, we'll never know. Let's just not know. And then there's the people like, okay, we got to figure this out. So I don't know if we can go in both directions and have a great conversation. I'm totally open. I just wanted to say, yeah, if other people are into it, I'm open. So thank you.
Hello.
Alex?
Yes, we hear you.
You're next.
Good. I was thinking about this topic, and it's interesting because thinking rationally on a topic and giving yourself a hypothesis, an opinion, entitles you to put it to the group and ask what their thoughts are. So you get the feedback, and then you're off to the races. And that's scientifically trying to evaluate the responses. And they're, of course, governed by your own inner biases, your own hypotheses and opinions that already exist in your mind and your life's education. So that's part of trying to get cohesive between the new information and what's existing already and the conflicts that arise from that. That's what causes so much wasting. It wastes a lot of time because we're not plugged into the neural network and the machine language that it will streamline the whole process. That'll be fantastic, but it's still a long way off, I think. Over.
Thanks. All of your comments trigger me in associating this particular topic with the one of education and learning. And Barry, I know you've talked and mentioned this a lot also. And Josh, if indeed we're not covering new territory, fill us in, okay? But I do think that we've covered this a lot, and there are still nuances to be discovered here. So the thing I'm about to point out here, and maybe obvious because it's been pointed out many times here, is because we have an education system that's, some people put it, a factory model, where there are correct answers, and getting the wrong answer is actually not, let's say, rewarded or acknowledged as an opportunity for learning. It's just, hey, you're wrong, you're inadequate, and therefore we're going to pick somebody better than you to blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's that distinction, which starts this whole shame process, this whole discomfort with quote unquote being wrong, as opposed to really helping people understand topics. Okay, why are there time limits set on whether somebody learns something? You know, if I really want to go into chemistry, why don't you let me do all 24 experiments and not, you know, stop me at 8 because it took me a little bit longer? You know, it's because we have a factory model where it's not efficient for the teachers to do it that way, but it's clearly not effective for the students to do it the way we're doing it. In fact, you know, this whole week I was thinking, what if we inverted the education model? And instead of taking a person, a student, and introducing them to a university with lots of teachers where they now have to go and pick out the right classes and whatever, what if we took the student, and based on that student's abilities and interests, we gathered a set of mentors and instructors tailored for that student to support that student's exploration of whether it's physiology or whether it's, you know, permaculture, whether it's language, whether it's performance, you know, and just gather that group that would say, I'm going to make sure, we are going to make sure this person blossoms. And what if everybody had that opportunity to gather 3 to 20 or 50 such people who would support that person's growth? Invert the model. It's not a class model where you got to take this class, that class, this class, and you're going to get A, B, C, D, F, and we're going to grade you, and then we're going to pronounce you fit for society or unfit for society. So I think that inversion is something I've always been thinking about ever since I thought, you know, why do I have to walk these 7 minutes to go from this class to that class when that class I was just in is still on my mind, is still interesting me? I want to think about that some more. I want to go talk to that teacher. I want to talk to the other students. I want to play with this manipulative and, you know, figure something out. And I think that's the beginning of the shame and pain and wrongness of not yet fully grokking a topic. So we're not encouraged to behave like, you know, investigative reporters when we hit quote unquote professional activities. Anyway, this is a topic that's been expressed before. I'd like to sort of bounce it off you guys again. I see Stacy, Alex, Josh.
Yeah, so I love that model that you're talking about, and I've thought about it a lot, and I think the only way that it becomes valuable or cost effective, for lack of a better word, is if learning is action oriented. Because you can't use all these resources of like these professors and not be coming up with more of a product than that one person. It wouldn't balance.
I'll think about that. Alex.
There's an emotion we have when we're doing something we don't like, and it's not nice. When we're doing something we love, this is getting the simplicity down, right down to the basics. When doing something you love, you've got an emotion producing endorphins, right? It's pleasurable. It's worth pursuing because of that pleasure. You've got a target, but is it a good thing to do? Is it wise? Have you asked yourself the 3 basic questions? Why do I like this? Is it the right thing to do? Should I pursue it? It's like the old cliche. But there's advice children can work on, and that is this advice: that is, if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So why would somebody pursue mathematics? They love it. It's going to be one of the things they are involved in often, and they're enjoying themselves. So it's obvious. If you do what you love, it's not really work, but you can enjoy it, and you'll receive the benefits of it with income and friendships and business acquaintances because you're doing what you love, and you're doing it well. That's another quagmire rabbit hole. Some people love doing things, but they can't do it very well. So there's opportunities for awakening the thought processes and doing more training. It's all training and skill requirement, isn't it? I mean, system thinkers like Barry will tell us this, and Josh will tell us this. If you train the crew, your ship will have a good journey over. Unless it's stormy weather.
Joshua.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm trying to do what you had talked about, Sam, is take a second to think about what Alex just said before I just open my mouth and start blurting out what I wanted to say. And I'm just thinking about also what Alex said earlier about biases. And I was also thinking about what you said last week about, hey, Josh and I can trigger each other, me and Sam. And I was wondering what triggers me the most. And I was listening this morning when you were talking and you used the word we, and there was a bias and an assumption that we all grew up in a certain system, and that system has flaws and we need to fix that system. And I get triggered because I reject only one system and fighting a system, but I embrace the multiple systems around the world of different ways of growing up and learning, and the most beautiful institutions that do exist out there that give you that opportunity to think in between classes and don't power over and systemically push people into a factory driven, profit driven system. And I was fortunate enough to travel to places where people didn't grow up that way, and I got to have conversations with them and learn, and I would like to bring that to the conversation, and just really lean into the fact that maybe there is a predominant system and powering over that exists in the world, but there's also a smaller percentage. Maybe it's 15, maybe it's 10%. I don't know. I haven't traveled the whole world, but I know there's places like my father works in Africa and Ghana. And he told me when he first went to work with the villagers there, they wouldn't show up on time. They wouldn't even show up on the day that they were supposed to show up. And he couldn't figure it out. And he said, we were supposed to meet on Wednesday. It's Friday. Why are you showing up on Friday? And they said, well, the crops didn't cooperate on Wednesday. So we had to wait and help them out on Thursday. And then we came on Friday. We're here now. So what do you need? And it really was a different mentality. And it made me think that not everyone is working in the same time frame in the same systemic way. And I think that's a way of doing us different. And I do like the ability, I love it when we really take our time to listen to each other. Those are my favorite GCC calls. And that's the thinking aspect of action and thought, where you take an action to take in what the other person said before you say what you need to say. And for everyone, it can be different. It can be uncomfortable too with silences. I know when Joel was talking the other day, there was a long, uncomfortable silence. And I just wanted to really think about what he said. And I logged off because I wanted to take the time. And I've been thinking about what he said all week. And it was really powerful. It was really beautiful what he said. And with that, I'm complete for now. Thank you for this great topic.
Kayla, when you're ready.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Woo. I like what you said, Sam. The thing that kind of came to mind with that is we never have opportunities to slow down. There aren't any opportunities for us to just kind of muse on one particular portion of our life or our learning that we absolutely love and explore that better. One of the things that I heard last night, no, it wasn't last night, it was the night before, was sometimes some of the best people that are really good at their craft know that there's a whole universe to learn about it. But anyways, that being said, I'm so sorry. I don't, the dogs were howling when you proposed the topic and you said something about emotion, and then I couldn't kind of follow it after that. So can you repeat that again?
That pisses me off, Kayla.
Sorry. The dogs.
Okay, I'm not sure I can repeat it verbatim, but the whole point to me was that emotions to me are a signal that we need to like change focus or change behavior, or change thinking, or change direction. And yet, I was asking the question, is there ever a moment when thinking is the wrong thing, that you still want to stay in the emotion? Maybe grief is the only case I can think of where that statement is true. But are there other cases where it's not advisable to move towards thinking it's the right thing or appropriate to just stay in the feeling? I know this is a controversial subject. I really do. That was one of my leading questions here. Josh?
Yeah, the two that come up for me is sports and music, where thinking is not helping you. My basketball coach used to smack me in the head. Stop thinking. Just put the ball in the fucking hoop. Like, stop, you're thinking too much. Like, where are you going to pass to? Are you going to dribble? What are you going to do? Just play ball. Like, just stop thinking. And he would hit me in the head. And musicians also, when I was starting off playing music, it was the same thing. It was like, yo, feel the music, bro. Get in the rhythm. Come on, what are you doing? You're thinking. You're trying to play the instrument. Just listen. Be in the moment. Those are two that come to my mind where thinking does not help so much. I don't know if anyone else has more.
One more.
I think you're right, but there is something that gets in the way of that statement, and that is that there's thinking going on all the time, and until you're totally deep in meditation, and even then, you're still thinking. So it's the direction of your thought, not the thinking, that's concerning. So if you're thinking about the right thing, if you're thinking about getting the ball in the hoop, you're thinking about the right thing. And the coach won't hassle you. If you're thinking about the opponents, that's part of the game too. So it's a matter of balancing your thinking to get the ball in the hoop, I guess.
Do you mind if I just add on to that real quick? Is the thinking takes place before. So there's a time for thinking, which is the practice time where you're doing muscle memory. And then there's a time for not thinking. So the practice is the thinking time. And then the actual state of doing, when the game time starts, that's when you stop thinking and you allow for non-thought and just pure action.
Alex, are you done?
Yeah, I think so. It's
Okay.
it'd be interesting to define more closely what that line is that divides between the action and the thought.
Yeah, this is clearly a rough, very misshapen thought. So thanks for all the feedback. Josh, I think you have an interesting point about the sports and music. I just came up with another one, okay, which is meditation, okay? Now, on the other hand, meditation is not just sitting in feelings. That, to me, is not meditation, okay? But it is not so much focused on constructive thought. Oh, Stacey, you got a good one there too.
Notice I put it in the chat instead of.
Okay, you said lovemaking. You mean sex? No, I'm just kidding.
No, well, actually, I purposely used the word lovemaking as opposed to
I
sex.
know. Yeah, good. So yes, there's clearly a class of things, and I want to think about these things because to me, being in flow, there's still something going on here while you're in flow. If something were not going on here, I don't think it would be in flow. I wouldn't be as good a musician, however good I am already, okay, if there wasn't something going on in here. I have to know the music. I have to know my other chamber music players. I got to know the circumstance, in order to be in flow at that moment with the music. Probably the same with dance. Whoa, somebody's trying to call me. Okay, geez, what's going on here? Sorry, that's one drawback of using Google Voice. You can actually set it to ring on multiple different devices, but then you have to shut off every one of those devices. You can't just shut off one. Anyway, so I do think it's an interesting point, but to me, there's still something going on in here, and I still call that thought. When one is in flow with music or dancing or sports or lovemaking, I mean, really, in lovemaking, okay, and just speaking personally, if I'm unconscious, I don't think it's as good for whatever partner I'm with.
Didn't say unconscious. Because again, first of all, for me, when I think of flow,
Yeah.
Flow is it's automatic. The thinking is there, everything is just imprinted. You're in flow. It's not removal of, like you said, when you're playing music, there's a certain amount of thought. But to me, it's already built in.
Okay. See, I love this conversation. Sorry, Barry, I'm going to go one more time, okay? That is, I think to me, there's a very, very real difference between quote unquote negative emotions, okay? Sorry for the triggering terminology, and positive emotions. I think they're very, very different. And just calling it all emotions, I think is a very blunt approach. See, I don't think anybody has a problem thinking that, hey, let's just stay in our positive emotions, right? Especially the ones you feel when you're in flow, when you're making great music, when you're actually jazzing together, when you're actually lovemaking together, when you're actually walking together, right? Nobody ever says, oh, I want less of this emotion, right? And it's actually informing what you do next. But these negative emotions, I think, communicate something very different. It could be, I'm just a very juvenile thinker on this topic. That's why I'm using you guys here to bounce ideas off of, okay? Is that's a set of signals that's actually trying to tell us something about what's going on and what we might want to do. And the positive emotions, the joy, the ecstasy, the, fun. I don't think they're trying to pull us out of whatever we're trying to do, unless we're being hedonistic and full of hubris. So I'm trying to figure out that distinction also, okay? So my main point in this particular contribution is these things that we just identified, flow, dance, music, lovemaking, sports, I think there's still something very effective going on here. And they're not being hijacked by emotions. In fact, they're being enhanced by positive emotions. That's the distinction I'd like to lay on the table for now. Over.
I want to sort of double back to where Kayla came in when she said, what exactly is the name and the scope of the topic? The name of the topic that I adopt is metacognition. This is a word that's, I guess it's been around for a long time, but it's not a common word that people think about. But metacognition is thinking about thinking about emotions, thinking about learning, and thinking about the role of emotions in learning. And that's where I began in this research something like 35 years ago. Let's go back to what Josh said about practicing and playing basketball. When you're learning how to play and you haven't gotten on the field yet, you're in rehearsal mode or understanding the game, you're thinking about how you're going to behave, and you have some anxiety about performance, and you have some expectations about what actions you're going to perform that will result in successful performance. And then you go out and you execute, you do the action. And as a result of the action, you're either satisfied or not. You say, that was good. That worked out the way I anticipated. Or you can say, that didn't work out right. That something's gone wrong. So in terms of valence of emotion, positive or negative, you can start with something as simple as satisfaction and dissatisfaction. And if satisfaction, you say, good, I have mastered this to a reasonable point. If the outcome is dissatisfaction, negative emotion, you got to say, okay, I'm going to go back and do some more rehearsal, some more thinking, some more diagnosis, and some more practice until you get to the point of satisfaction, at which point you say, okay, that part of the learning curve is good enough. Let me go on to the next element of the game. One of the things that promotes study is anxiety. If you're going to be expected to perform and you're not confident that your performance is going to be up to par, you have anxiety, and that anxiety, which is a negative emotion, promotes study. Because how do you get rid of anxiety? How do you get from anxiety to confidence? Mastery. How do you get to mastery? Study, rehearsal, practice. So it motivates the learning dynamic, the learning process. Now, it's easy to say, okay, there's thinking and there's emotion, and these are two distinct things. My late colleague, Marvin Minsky, actually claims that emotions are a species of thinking. He doesn't actually make a sharp distinction between thought and emotion. So there's some kind of an overlap where they're a little of both. And that's where metacognition comes in, because you say, okay, I was dissatisfied with that performance, and you're thinking about your dissatisfaction and your anxiety. That metacognition is sort of this intermixing of thinking about emotions. And so in that way, your emotions help guide the learning process. So the learning process isn't just like, I open a recipe, I follow the instructions, I'm an automaton, I do it. No, the learning process is dynamic, and the emotions are part of the guide. It's like the dashboard. They say emotions are the instrument panel on the dashboard of life. They tell you, am I going too fast, too slow, am I off track? You know, it's something haywire, and your feelings are sort of the first clue that a little idiot light is starting to blink. You know, I'm running out of gas, okay? So emotions are a very important clue or signal, as Sam calls it, that guides the learning process and the motivation process. I'll stop there.
Josh.
Do you want to go first, Stacy?
Yeah, I do, if it's okay.
Yes, I felt that. Yeah, no, please go ahead.
Yeah, because so Barry said that anxiety promotes learning, and that was with the assumption, I think it was with the assumption that to get rid of the anxiety, somebody would go back and make sure to do the learning. And I can understand that presumption, but I'm also thinking about anxiety can cause somebody to totally shut down and not go on.
The class.
Yeah, optimal anxiety.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to add is anxiety certainly doesn't promote performance. So I know with me, if I'm in a group of friends, I can talk about anything. I can flow, the words just come through me. I might come up with sometimes brilliant insights. When I'm in a group where I'm not as comfortable or I'm being watched, it could be a whole different thing. That's anxiety. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Stace. Alex is in there as well.
Excellent. I'll just go real quick. As I was thinking about the dynamic between working in a group setting or a one-on-one, and how you're thinking and feeling and emotions in that setting versus when you're meditating, it's just you. That's one of the core tenets of meditating. So you're creating your own feedback loop between your emotions and thought, and you're creating this state between yourself. But in dance or lovemaking, that's why I like lovemaking a lot, because I mean, there's also self-lovemaking. I didn't think of that, but if you have a partner in lovemaking
You
or
might
in
have to
dancing,
think that.
yeah, I just realized that as I was speaking. I'm like, wait a second, there is self-lovemaking. I didn't think of that.
But you have to think.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you have to imagine you making love to yourself. And what I'm saying is, when I'm playing basketball, if it's just me by myself, that's one thing. But when I'm in a team, the reason my coach asked me not to think was because I'm impeding on the emotions and the feelings of the other people playing when they're going through the motions of the sport. So if it's a team sport or a team dance, etc., the emotions also signal, meaning the look on your face when you're about to pass the ball signals to that person if they should cut down the lane to get the pass. And emotions are a way to signal not just to yourself, but to other people what state you're in for resonance, so they can also play the game with you, or they can act and think with you. So it's that group think that's so important, which is why my coach, I believe, was saying, don't think, because you need to pass the ball a certain amount of times before you shoot, at least in high school basketball, in order for everybody to touch the ball and get involved in the game, so everyone can be in resonance with each other, and then you shoot the ball. So it's really, I think emotions are a way to signal to each other to create a dialogue or group think or dance or resonance or synchronicity or something. Whereas when you're by yourself, if you notice, you don't have to smile, you don't have to do all these facial expressions. When you're meditating, you can just be. But if you're meditating with other people and you open your eyes and they're looking at you, maybe you smile, maybe you don't smile, there's a resonance. So I think emotions help, like Barry said, it's the dashboard for yourself to look at, but also the dashboard to display out to others. And with that, I'm complete.
Alex?
There's an aspect of the emotional connection between the group you're mixing with and the level of anxiety you experience in their response and feedback. And that's tied closely to your competence in the subject level, I guess. And the willingness of the people involved in the group to accept all comers, regardless of their level of expertise and experience. This means we're more like a family than a business. And that's where people's emotions can be recognized and handled effectively, more effectively than would occur in a corporation, where you'd be replaced. You'd just simply be replaced, you'd disappear. And so it's important, I think, for me at least, to understand what the honours and the privilege to be amongst these people who have this new attitude, the nuance. It's not a hierarchy. It's another way. It's a new paradigm way of dealing with a group of interaction people who have an agenda or no agenda. That's something we should specify more clearly, I believe. Over.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Okay, so I have 2 points, but first, a really quick experiment. Who's mad right now?
You said mad?
Yes, which of us, who here, is mad right now?
Well, I'm always absolutely insane, so I'm crazy. But
I was
not,
going to say,
I'm mad.
crazy.
Yeah, I'm always crazy.
Angry
Right.
as hell.
Who's happy? Who's sad? Who's guilty?
What was the word?
Guilty.
Guilty.
Because there once was somebody in a workshop I was taking that said, basically, there's only 4 emotions. You're either mad, sad, glad, or guilty. And I thought, that's another very blunt way to put things. If emotions are such an important piece of our life, a component of our lives, why do we not have more fine-grained resolution and understanding of the various other emotions. They may fit in some of these larger categories, but what about disappointment? What about shame? What about regret? What about envy? All of these things which you try to figure out, are they really mad, sad, glad, guilty? Is it really just that simple? So if emotions are idiot lights, do we only want 3 or 4 idiot lights, or do we want a more rich panel so we can actually tell more what's really going on? Okay, so I do think that emotions are important. It's important to understand those signals. But I guess my question, which it was the one that motivated me at the beginning, is at what point, when is it appropriate for us to just sit in the negative emotion and not move towards thought? We've identified a couple of which I try to reframe. So to me, the two that apply in that question still are grief and meditation. So that's one. The other point I'd like to make is, and this is the longer term objective I have on raising this question, is how do we do critical thinking, rational thinking, quote unquote, smart thinking, maybe, more frequently than we do reactions, than the way we do just triggering, the way we do lashing out. Because yes, it is true that there are many places where different education systems exist. In fact, my kids went to one of those. I've talked about it before. It's a Living Wisdom School. But is it inappropriate to say that in general here in the US, we don't have that? So I was generalizing, yes. I'm responding to Josh's point. So does that generalization become invalid simply because there are existence points that actually are not the what I am describing? Likewise, in the point about anxiety. Barry was making points about whether anxiety is motivating or demotivating. And yes, there are cases where there are instances of the other. And does that invalidate the point that he was trying to make? So I wonder, how do we individually make that judgment about whether we go with the generalization or do we point out the opposite in a way that it adds to the conversation? I'm not clear on this yet. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying that when one makes a statement, and that statement could potentially be true of 3 or 4 sigma of the cases that we're talking about. And then one needs to go to 5 sigma to say, oh, there's an exception there. Is that really sinking in? The original statement really sinking in at that point? Or are we debating? Are we in ping pong mode? This is an honest question. It's not meant to be pokey. I understand that it could be, but this is an honest question. Over.
When Sam ticked off the model of 4 emotions, mad, sad, glad, and guilty, when I started thinking about the role of emotions in learning, and this is not all emotions, it's just emotions that are connected to the learning process. So it's a subset of all emotions. I end up with 7 axes, and each axis goes from a negative valence end to a positive valence end. And I'll just recite them just to give you a flavor of 7 emotional axes. So that's really 14 because there's opposite ends. And the first one that I thought of way back in the mid 1980s was the anxiety confidence axis. Because anxiety says, I don't want to be, I have this anxiety, I recognize it because I feel unprepared. I feel like I'm not going to perform. And the only rational way to get out of anxiety is to gain mastery, which means do some work, do some study, do some practice. So the anxiety confidence axis was the first one that came to mind when I started thinking about emotions and learning. The second axis that I wrote down, not necessarily the most important, next most important one, but was boredom and fascination. Of course, you would rather be fascinated than bored, but we find ourselves sometimes with twiddling our thumbs, nothing to do, and we can't find anything interesting. So boredom and fascination is an axis that also guides what we focus on, what we pay attention to, and what we engage in. Now, if you're like me and you're a problem solver professionally, a very important axis is frustration and euphoria. You observe a problem that needs solving, that needs some research, and you try to solve it, and you don't solve it at first because it's a hard problem. And so you have frustration. And anybody who's in high tech probably is very well aware of being frustrated while trying to solve a hard problem that somehow that's been assigned to them or they're responsible for. And when you finally solve it and you have that, that light goes on in the aha moment and you figure out how to fix it, you have that endorphin high, the euphoria. So frustration, euphoria was the third axis that I wrote down. A related axis, and this kind of gets into a little bit into grief, is the dispirited, encouraged axis. So if you're having too many failures, you're just simply not getting anywhere. You have grief. You're dispirited, you're dismayed. And of course, the opposite is to be encouraged. And this is sort of the role of the cheerleader, the mentor, who doesn't know the answer to the problem you're working on, but it sort of acts at a cheerleading role to sort of keep you motivated. So dispirited, encouraged. The next one is a very powerful axis, especially in drama. It's the terror versus enchanted, so, or fear versus love, if you want to put it that way. So if you're in terror, you really are very often dysfunctional. And if you're enchanted, you're engaged. So fear is sort of run away, and enchanted says, draw closer. So that's an important axis, not just in learning, because it's in relationships too. The sixth one I wrote down is humiliation versus pride. And I think everybody can recognize, you don't want to be humiliated and embarrassed. You want to do something and be proud of it and receive accolades. So humiliation and pride is another very powerful emotional axis that plays a powerful role in learning. And the last one, the seventh one that I only added quite recently, is one that you probably take some time to think about it. And it's contempt versus inspired. Now, you might think that contempt is the opposite of respect. And in some sense it is. But when I started thinking about the role of emotions in learning, if you look at somebody who you consider your rival and they're outperforming you, you can be contemptuous of them, try to put them down so that you don't look so bad, or you can be inspired by them, look at them as a role model. So that's a kind of a subtle, delicate one. And I ended up setting the seventh axis to be contempt versus inspired, to be in awe of somebody, but not intimidated by them. So that's just, for example, 14 axes, 7 axes with 14 labels, just in the role of emotions and learning.
So I know, hey, Alex, go ahead.
There's an axis in between the emotional and profitable collaboration. It's just, there's a family emotional gathering where the leadership comes from the parents. There's a hierarchy there. And in a group, there must be a hierarchy of some description for people to be able to accept the fact that others are going to have to deal with their emotions when they get triggered. So we understand that corporations don't do that. It's the board, somebody will come back from a board meeting to talk to you, right? They'll say, look, I spoke to the board. I asked all the people in the other departments if there was a place where they could fit you in. Unfortunately, nothing came up. So we'll have to let you go. We're sorry about that, but this is the buck stops with the board, and that's it. So there you are, a person loses their family at home and ends up committing a crime to survive, or living on the street or something worse. We can have a corporation that is more human oriented, but it would involve a lot of investment from people with big hearts who have the ability to recognize that a lot of the company profits will eventually end up in a welfare state. looking after the people who drag their feet, sort of thing. People who don't have the same visions as the board members. So there's an issue. Over.
I think my hand is up, so I'll go next. Thanks, Alex. In fact, your theme there about what happens in groups and organizations is one of the aspects of the theme I was about to bring up next. The reason I'm asking these questions is I'd like to understand how the group's responsibility shifts when person is triggered or in any way gets emotional. This has been a big topic in GCC for the entire 4 years that we've been in existence. And I do bring this up on blocking, so I do try to explore it there. But I do think it's so fundamental to bond raising and foundation laying that I think it's also appropriate for Saturdays. Because on the way towards critical thinking and actually, you know, making an impact in the world, which to me does involve collective critical thinking. Does that get enhanced or does that get waylaid when people get triggered? I know there's a group that potentially says we do need to stop whatever we're doing and turn our attention to the trigger for anyone who is triggered. And I'm trying to figure out when that's appropriate and when that's distracting and defocusing for a group. Hey, Mutt. So that's really kind of the direction of inquiry here. It starts with negative and positive emotions and whether we want to sit in them. It goes towards personal reactions and what that does to a group. And then it also goes more towards what does that do to my own ability to think rationally and critically, constructively, as well as a group's ability to do so. That's my question. It's a big question involving lots of sub-questions there. So that's the context in which I'm trying to ask all of this. Over.
I think that's a very nuanced question too, because I think that the initial thing when emotions come up is, yeah, you do have to stop for a short period of time. Sometimes just to really, for example, some of you have seen me get yelled at on video. I'm not talking about you, Barry. And when that has happened, and it's happened more than once, I usually say, why are you yelling at me? So, and I think that's an important, a short way to stop the action. And if it could be handled in just, you know, sometimes that pause is enough to shift everything. If it's not though, then after a while it has to be taken somewhere else. But also I want to say in terms of organizations or whatnot, I do think there's a missing role, and that missing role sometimes functions as that one-to-one coach, peer, nurturer, whatever it is. That's not the whole of the role, because it winds up having additional benefits, like it winds up being the connector person because they get to know all these other people in another way. But as I've said before, also in work, some of us work well by speaking out our thoughts. That's how we hear ourselves and we refine our ideas. So I think that, I mean, I've served in that role my whole life, not getting paid or feeling any value for it, but it's a very valuable position that just hasn't been treated that way. I'm complete.
So that to me is another huge orthogonal topic. Is there anyone here who feels that their value has been seen by everyone else here?
Wait, say that again. That does feel?
That does feel that others here see their value.
Yeah.
Depends on who the others are.
Not
Some
100%.
do, some don't.
It's a
Not
pointed
100%,
question.
but yes.
It's a pointed question.
Yeah.
I think
It's a-
all of us have some aspect. Okay, I'm generalizing here. I think I have an aspect that says, I would really like to bring this, but I haven't really brought it yet. And people haven't really heard it when I mentioned it before. Is there an aspect of that that's inside each of us?
An aspect of that.
An aspect of, I'd like to bring something, but people haven't heard me. They haven't acknowledged it.
So you think it's not ready yet? It's not timely yet? Is that what you're saying?
No,
You're
I'm
afraid
saying
it's
I've
not
expressed
yet.
it, but it didn't get any resonance in the group.
Okay, yeah. It's premature. It's too early for this group. This group's not yet ready, you feel.
Well, that's an interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay. The feeling I get is I'm not heard,
Not heard. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Or acknowledged is another way of saying it. Okay.
Or it's not of value to this particular group.
Alex and Josh?
Some responders in the group are valued more highly than others, whether we like it or not, due to our own biases. And if you get responded to or triggered by the feedback of another member that's acknowledging or failing to acknowledge your input, the different emotions you experience are dependent on how much you value that person's opinion. The hierarchy, you know, if it's somebody whose honesty you don't value particularly high, it'll just skip across the water and disappear without making much impact. But if it's a person who's you respect highly for their education and honesty, heartfelt integrity, then it'll impact you deeply. Over.
Thanks, Alex. Josh.
Yeah, when you said that, Sam, I just thought about what is something I've been trying to get across that I feel I haven't been heard. And it brought up the idea of valuing these conversations and putting a value on it in a trust as the Global Challenges Collaboration Group trust, and using these conversations to help others in the future and putting a value on them so that they're secured and acknowledged and in a knowledge repository that can move forward to help others by somehow giving these conversations to future generations. So that's something I feel I haven't been heard or resonated with, of the Global Challenges Collaboration Trust, where none of us owns it, but we all steward it. And with that, I'm complete.
Okay, let me respond to that if I may, because I think that I have heard that several times. And my response has usually been, you can correct this if it doesn't come across that way, has usually been, what problem is a trust going to solve that we're actually facing and is more important than other problems? To me, those videos, those notes, those documents, those texts are already shared. So what about it is going to get lost if we don't create that trust? That's really what I'm trying to figure out, because as far as I know, they're all available. They're all out in the open. They're all shared, except for the ones that are not posted. So I agree with that. Okay. So usually I've got, all of mine posted. The Sunday ones are actually not regularly posted. Okay. But the ones that I'm sharing, they're all out there. The texts are there. The notes are there. They're all linked. So if we put it into a trust, what would that really solve and make possible that's not already possible now, is what I'm trying to figure out. And I've responded that way before every time you've brought this up. So I think it's a difference between disagreement versus not hearing. I think I am hearing you. I am, in a sense, disagreeing because I'm not acting immediately as you suggest. Okay. Over.
That's a great question. I think that's exactly why it hasn't resonated, is there was never a need to do that at this moment in time. But this last week, Facebook went completely down. So that means everything that was on Facebook, if it did not come back up, was lost. So there is a very immediate need with that example this last week. And then also, if YouTube got bought out, let's just say by a Chinese company one day, Google said, we don't want to deal with YouTube. We want to focus on our core search engine and we don't want to deal with this video aspect. Let's let TikTok buy it. And they said, well, all of the Sam stuff, Sam's not paying, so it's gone. And they deleted off the server. So, and then the group says, well, where is all that stuff? So I don't have to go any further than that. I think that's pretty clear and an evident need.
Yeah. So just for the record, I am paying, and I also like to look at the probabilities of things, which was a point that was made earlier. You know, there's so much to be done with that material that I think to me would be enabling and empowering. The likelihood of, you know, that material being lost is relatively lower than that, in my opinion.
I got one more example too. By putting it in a trust, we've raised very small amounts of money together on Open Collective, but we're still on there. And it has, Open Collective has grown exponentially since we first got on there. And the ability for other foundations, other organizations to invest in the work that we don't have the time to do, to sort out the knowledge repository, so on and so forth. Or let's just say Ken Burns wanted to do a documentary on conversational system thinkers documentary, and he wanted to go ahead and use this footage. He would have to go to each one of us individually. Oh, wait, am I still here?
We
Yes.
can hear you.
Oh, okay, a call came in. Yep, hold on, let me come back. There we go.
Have the same call rejection issue that I've got.
Yep, except it's on an iPad, so hang up.
Mhm.
There we go. Okay, and we're back. So, sorry, before I was interrupted, it's just, if someone wanted to work with us individually, it would be a lot harder than if we had collectively formed into a trust where we all agreed that all of these conversations are owned by the Global Challenges Conversation Trust, not a group on Facebook that can be taken down, but an entity that can live past us. And one of the things that's been brought up a lot recently with a lot of my family members and friends is when you die, Facebook does, if you have not acknowledged that there's a trustee for your account, it just lives on without anyone, and it just sits there and no one can manage it or do anything with it. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at when I say let's build a trust, is if I was to pass away and I said, you know, maybe Cusella said, I would like our daughter to see these conversations, you know, when she's older, and there was no way for her to get a hold of that, or, you know, and vice versa for everybody here. And also the things that we can't think of that we might actually end up doing together. You know, this is barn raising, so it might be 6 years, but then we do things, and there are Miro boards that could, or Trello boards that could be, you know, all of these things are on different platforms that we don't actually own collectively. So I think that is a pretty clear case. I don't know if everyone does. I'd be curious to know if this resonates at this moment in time, as opposed to 2 years ago when I first brought up the issue.
You know, having the knowledge base is only half the solution. You can walk into a public library and say there's 10,000 books shelved in that library, and you're looking for a piece of information, but you don't know which book it's in. Now, you might be able to read a book a week. If that's your capacity for reading books, you're obviously not going to be able to look at every book individually looking for what you want. So they provide something called a card catalog, which is an index. But a card catalog only has about 20 words on it. And those 20 words might not link from what you're looking for to the book that has what you're looking for. So actually, the real challenge is how to find the one item, the one paragraph in the one book out of 10,000 that has the information that you're looking for when you don't know the name of the topic. This is like when Kayla says, what's the name of the topic? If I say, oh, what you want to do is you want to go in the section of the library on metacognition. And then now you're down to maybe 100 books, which is manageable. So knowing the name of the subject that you're trying to research, that's challenging. Until you know the name of it, you don't know what to look at, what to look up in the card catalog. And so that search function, which Google helped solve on the internet, is a really profound innovation. Card catalogs don't quite do the job. Google does it a little better, Facebook doesn't do it good. They just push stuff at you that random that they want to push. This is the really hard problem, not retaining the knowledge, but finding the item you want.
And it's usually in a different expression than the way you think of it.
Exactly.
I didn't call this thing metacognition, right? You called it metacognition.
Exactly.
I can see the mapping. So if you were Barry, you'd look for metacognition, you wouldn't find the words that I was using, right?
Exactly.
And if I was looking for this, I wouldn't find the words that you're using.
Well, you'd find emotion and thinking.
Yeah.
Which is about as close as you can get.
Right.
If someone in the future put in Sam got emotional, then think of all the things that we would find. I mean, that's the great thing. I mean, you can start narrowing things down, but also it helps to broaden it out and get that randomness, which is what I think these conversations are best for, because over the years, there's been a plethora of topics. So it's the serendipity that I want to give to the future generations, not the precise, this is the encyclopedia of GCC. I'm complete.
Alex?
We can have a Hall of Fame with the top 10 trigger points. And if you used our search system to go through all the videos, I think you'd find that the word triggered had been mentioned most by Sam. He'd be the top mentioner of that particular word topic. But if the computer is the brain, if the computer is the internet, then you have this situation where everything we do, if you like, when you're looking at neurons fire in a brain, every time that neuron fires, the muscle memory strengthens it, it becomes more significant to the general purpose. And that means if you've got a link on a web page and somebody clicks it, that's like triggering that neuron and increasing the power of that memory, increasing the strength of that connection. That's why I love the idea of links. All of us people, human beings with emotions, creating your top 10 lists and publishing them with HTML. And this is a real way to help teach the AI what we are doing, who we are. We're introducing it. It's like a child, and we're educating it, or attempting to. And it's not easy unless we combine our efforts and operate like a well-functioning oiled machine. Over.
Thanks, Alex. So Josh, I am going to respond to you because I don't want you to walk away thinking I didn't hear you again. Okay. Okay. So let's see whether this is more satisfying than the passive aggressiveness. Okay. I do think there's two parts to your question, the way I hear it. Okay. I hear the part that says, let this entity own all of these artifacts that we're creating. Okay. And I think I've addressed that. Okay. That the likelihood of losing that right now is, to me, relatively low. The effort required to actually do something about it and put it someplace where it's going to be permanent, relatively high. Okay. So that was my reaction to these artifacts. There's a separate issue you just brought up today, which is if we have a legal entity with a charter, then other people could donate and support it. Okay, that part I actually agree with. Okay, but that's the part that I actually have been working on with you all for the last 4 years to say, what is it that we want to create? What is that charter? What is that mission? What is that vision? What is that co-vision? And we've not really been able to get that expressed and adopted yet. When we do, then I would say, great, let's create this thing. Okay. But I'm not sure we can create something just to say, okay, this thing exists just to own these artifacts, because it solves a problem which, to me, yes, it does need to be addressed, but it's a low likelihood of actually occurring. And there's much higher potential benefit for the energies and time that I'm about to spend otherwise. So that's just my response to the two aspects I see in your question. Okay. Josh.
Yeah, your logic is absolutely sound, Sam, and I totally understand that. But it's also a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's not a need now, wait till it is a need. And I think that's the best time to respond to and ask, is when it's possible and before Facebook goes down to grab those artifacts and pull them out. Because after Facebook goes down, you're going to say, oh, now we need to fix that. Okay, who has the Wayback Archive time machine, blah, blah. It makes it harder. So it's a lot easier to fix something or tune it up before it breaks than it is to go in. And then also the valuing of the assets. So what I've seen you do for the last 4 or so years is to try to make an agreement about something that hasn't been created yet, as opposed to create something and then make agreement on how to steward it. So if there's not a charter for the government of the United States, there's nothing for Congress or the Senate or the president to do if we haven't yet created something to value and a country to steward and to govern. And I think that's where it's the chicken before the egg type of scenario here at the GCC. Is I've been asking if we could define who's in the GCC. I just went on Facebook and saw admins that have not been in conversation for 2 years, but I believe Tammy should be an admin on the Facebook in case she ever wants to come back. I wouldn't ask for her to be removed, but at the same time, I don't see us asking people that come into conversation if they want to continue, or even checking in with people that are not here in conversation, such as Ruben, who came last week. I don't know if anyone reached out to Ruben to let him know, because it was Facebook that signaled him last week that we were having the conversation. Does he know we're having it again? And what kind of signaling do we have towards a group collective in order to create these agreements that we've been trying to make? And it's impossible. It drives me insane watching people try to make agreements with whoever's in the room and not asking everybody that's not in the room to come to the voting. So it's like only the people that show up to the voting booth get to vote for something. That's not democracy, that's a republic. And that's the way that America is run, is if you can show up, if you can get off work, then you have a say. But if you cannot, you don't get a say. And if you can go through these bureaucratic measures in order to get your right to vote, you have a say. If you have an actual home that you can send a ballot to, you get to vote. But if you're homeless, you don't get to vote. And those are the type of things I'd like to address before we address the agreement situation, is knowing who it is that's going to be making the agreement, and then going around and making sure that everyone had an opportunity to agree. And with that, I'm complete.
Okay. Stace?
Yeah, I just have a question that I would just like a one-word answer for, because I heard what Sam said about the effort required, just in general for any decision, the effort required. So my question is, Sam, are you the only one that would be able to do what's necessary for what Josh is asking? Because I don't understand
I don't think
what's
so.
actually
I think
involved.
all the videos are online. I've shared everything that I can share. So anybody can take those and put them anywhere else.
So what I'm asking is, if Josh had a group of people and he wanted to take lead, you're not saying, no, you can't do that.
Oh, in fact, I've said, create whatever you want to create. Do what you want
Okay.
to do.
I was just curious.
I'm not blocking anybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to know. Thanks.
Right. No.
Yeah, and just to share, I took Sam's comment, I think it was last summer, where we were talking about Agile. And I asked Sam, how many people does it take to make an Agile project? And he said, you can do it with one person. So I went ahead and started doing that. And I've been working with a group of people to create the need that we have of technology to go through all of this information. And that group is called Super Reality. And it's able to take all of the conversations, put them through Otter AI, transcript them into text, put that text into a GPT-3 that acknowledges everything that's ever been said, and then can correlate between the actual video conversations. So that technology did not exist last summer, but it does exist now. And so we're working on it. And anyone that wants to work with us and with GCC together, that would be wonderful. And I do believe that before we can do anything, we have to raise money. So that's what I'm trying to do. Is I put the Super Reality on Open Collective as well. And I'd also like to put you know, a little more effort and energy into asking if others are interested, because if there's no interest, you're absolutely right, Sam, there's no need to do this. But we've never asked the community as a whole outside of these conversations if they're interested in listening. From the few people I've talked to, they're fascinated. They want to know, what are you guys doing over there? What's happening? So I think there is interest, and I would really be curious to see. I did take down the website for 3 months for GCC, and I just put it back up recently. But I think there's interest. I'd like to find out. I don't know if anyone else is curious to know if people are interested.
Anybody? Me?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I put it in the chat, but, and this is a little separate. I really like the tool that Colin's working on. I really wish that I had access to that. That's something that I would want to play with. I don't want a machine doing it for me. I actually enjoy that. I want to be able to do it on my own.
So just to be clear, the machine doesn't do it for you. You have to tell the machine together. It's augmented reality, augmented learning, and augmented intelligence. It's not artificial. The machine just does it and we're stuck with that. And the algorithms are stuck. They're fluid and dynamic. I just want to be clear, Stacy,
Yeah, it
because
sounds wonderful. I'm just saying, just for me,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not like a I actually enjoy doing the, you know, the legwork, looking myself, seeing what connections there are myself. That's something I have fun doing. That's
me
how
and Glenn were doing that.
That's how I got here.
Yep, me and Glenn enjoyed it too, and it is fun. It's fun to go back and listen. That's why I think it's of value to the community at large, the global community, and to translate into all languages. That would be the next step, is to put it not just into English, but into all languages, and ask for people from other cultures and other places, not just to have it in that language, but to have it translated in a way that it's culturally understood. So when things, I think there's been a couple times here, Heiner said, you know, what are you guys talking about? Acetation. What is it? Acetation. It didn't translate into, you know, I think that's really important as well. So there's a lot of layers to communication. But I think step number one, Sam, would be to see if there is interest and see if donations start coming in through Open Collective, and then make an agreement. If there is that interest and there are people that want to give energies towards it, then you would have that need for the trust or charter at some point. If that, I would assume, I don't know. Let me know, Sam.
Okay, there's a bunch of questions out there. Let me start with some of the notes that I was taking. One of the tenets of Agile is solve the problem at hand, not a future problem. And that was what I was practicing. In other words, there's enough problems that we could potentially address, as opposed to trying to solve problems that don't yet exist. Okay, so that's a direct response to, yeah, you know, time to create a solution is when the problem doesn't exist. That to me is not how I understand Agile. Okay.
Wait,
No.
I'm so confused. I have to stop you right there. Colin's been working on this problem at hand for the last year. So
Yep.
Are you saying that it doesn't exist? I'm so confused.
No, I'm talking about the issue of the trust.
I just stated that it exists right now. Facebook went down this week. Are you
Right.
saying it doesn't exist?
I'm saying it exists for you. I don't see it as a real issue. Okay. So that's
Right.
what
That's
we-
why I'm not working with you on this Agile project. I picked
Right.
something that existed for me.
Right.
And then you have problems that exist for you that you've solved. And that's
right.
why we're a collective. Yeah. Sorry, I digress. Go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, that was a direct response on the Agile point. Okay. And I do think that at some point we may converge on something. And when we do, writing it up, communicating it, creating some legal entity out of it, absolutely the right thing to do. I've been trying to figure out whether we could do that starting September 2017. Okay. So it's not out of my consideration. I'm just saying, you know, there are steps that I would like to understand about this particular collective and whether it's converging or not, or whether we have clarity on membership or participation or assets or liabilities. By the way, I was one of the very first, along with Aaron, to start a regular monthly contribution to the GCC quote unquote collective fund. I believe that at some point Daniel shut it down because it was more overhead to administer than the money that was actually coming in. So I don't know how much still exists there. And, you know, last I heard, it was somewhere around 500 or 800 euros. Okay, that's what I recall. So it's still sitting there some way. But, you know, for lack of a lot of contribution, he did say the effort was not worth it. Okay. So it's not that there hasn't been some interest, it's just that that interest has been relatively low as far as active people contributing to something having to do with GCC. And keep in mind, those contributions were done kind of in faith that something useful would be created. It was before a charter, before any clear membership, before anything. We just said, hey, there's something we kind of believe in, let me contribute to it. So it's kind of doing what you were just describing as far as I could hear. So I am saying that stuff did happen. And without clarity, we're not likely to get a lot of momentum. And it's that clarity that I'm trying to figure out whether we can achieve. And that's why I'm looking at issues of distraction. I'm looking at issues of focus. I'm looking at issues of critical thinking. I'm looking at issues of triggers that, you know, take us aside. Those are all because I want that clarity and I want to sort of get that vision in place so that something can exist and it can grow and it can draw support and participation. Over.
Okay, I got a acknowledgement from PayPal when I made a contribution. It was a global open project or something of that nature. The people who established the Global Challenges Collaboration, I think they come under an umbrella from a group called the Global Open Networking Project or something like that. They're the people who send the receipts with the annual deductions or monthly contributions. I think it's annual at this place because I'm not getting monthly acknowledgements. But PayPal definitely sent me an email saying thank you for your contribution. It's been received. So I haven't changed my credit card. It's still coming from the same card I used three years ago.
Do you remember who asked you to make those contributions and who they were? Because I'm not familiar myself with anything having to do with PayPal around GCC.
I used PayPal to send money over the internet. And when I logged into the global GCC website, there was a make a contribution button. And I clicked on that and it said make a contribution, one single amount or monthly. And it said pay by credit card or PayPal. So I clicked PayPal.
That's probably the fund that I'm referring to that Daniel set up, or Daniel or Aaron set up.
Well, if you shut it down, I won't see any more of those acknowledgements. But it's a good idea to have a fund that's contributing money to a trust, and the trust has got a board of overseers who determine where the money's allocated. So that we all know, we all get a report showing us where the money was spent. And if it's a good idea, it's why aren't we doing it? I mean, I've got an idea for a college of knowledge on the eco farm that could attract Swiss investors with $4 million. 2 million for the farm and 2 million for the infrastructure in the College of Knowledge Eco Village Training Centre. And the people the disadvantaged kids who are educated in the College of Knowledge will be living on the eco farm and their labourers will be paying their rent for that accommodation by working on the hemp farm. So we get free labour on the hemp farm as well, thrown into the bargain. So that is a place where I could make that organisation, make that foundation a annual contributor to the trust. Over.
Go get him, Alex. So I do believe the last several minutes were a little bit of a specific redirection to this issue of whether the trust was being heard or not. So I do, however, want to go back to the theme that I was bringing that up in, the context that I was trying to bring that up in, which is, what does this do to groups when people get triggered? What is the responsibility of the individual? What is the responsibility of the group? Are there other roles involved? And how do we navigate and quote unquote govern ourselves around those set of issues? Some people get triggered by the use of the word govern, okay? But whatever agreements we have as groups that allow us to deal with whatever matters come up. Call it governance, call it agreements, call it, guidelines, whatever you want to call it. Now, my point on this has been that a large part of the responsibility rests with the individual who is triggered. I mean, probably in this conversation, some of you have been triggered, but actually, held it within and, decided to do something else with it. I know it happens to me, okay? On the other hand, some issues are too big, quote unquote, and one can't but react. And then what is that person's responsibility? What is the group's responsibility when that happens? And that clarity has not yet, in my opinion, been established here. So that to me is an issue that needs to get understood and dealt with on the way towards how do we get critical thinking? How do we get co-creation? How do we get collective intelligence? Because that's always where I'm trying to go. Over. Stace?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I just, at this point in my life, I don't really engage with people that haven't at least a certain amount of self-awareness and a true desire to continue to grow. So that's a filter.
Now, okay, no hands are up. So let me respond to that. Note that what that does, it's actually interesting to juxtapose what you just said with one of the other tenets which has been expressed here in GCC, which is it's all of us and it's everybody and every voice must be heard and everyone is welcome. There was a meme that was shared just last week or the week before that I think I specifically pointedly shared, which is if everyone is welcome and wolves and sheep both come, the sheep are going to get driven away. And if you don't recognize that, then you're not a very good systems thinker. Or if you don't make protections in place so that the sheep don't get driven out by the wolves, or worse, get eaten by the wolves, then you're not a very good, space holder. Which is why I really don't myself, and I've said this since, 2017, I don't hold this tenet as sacred. This, everybody's voice is welcome and needs to be heard. Over. Barry.
Yeah, I want to augment what Sam said by pointing out one element that meshes with what Sam said, and that is that attention is a scarce resource, and everybody has a finite attention span. Some shorter than others. Some have a very liberal ability to listen for hours, and some for, if you're lucky, for 5 or 10 minutes. And so part of this thing about everyone has the right to be heard, but within the limits of the audience's attention span, which means prepare what you're going to say, think it through and be succinct, or you're going to overrun the buffer for people's attention span.
Stacey, you were about to say something?
I kind of forgot, but to Barry's point, because I'm not for excluding people either. But for Barry's point, what I've learned to do is if I know that I'm going to get this really, really long answer to something that I don't want to hear, I've just learned to not ask that person the question at all. I wouldn't leave them out of the conversation. I'm conscious, I can't change them. I can only change me. So I'll just try not to engage them. That's very different than if there was somebody in this group that I thought was, to my way of thinking, like, dishonest or malevolent, then I wouldn't be in the group at all. Because for me, in that case, one bad apple does spoil the whole bunch. But other than that, I'm for inclusion. And one more thing, Alex, I just want to say one more thing. What I've noticed, though, is that people do learn to modify their behavior. When they see that they're getting certain reactions repeatedly, they do see if there's a certain level of self-awareness, and there is with everybody in our group, I think, they've learned to modify their behavior a little bit. Some it takes longer than others, but I've seen changes in people. I think we've all grown over the past few years.
Yeah, I've had a few one-on-ones with Barry on Wisdom on Wednesday. And if you ask him a question, he's off to the races. You get a long, drawn-out explanation. But the thing is, I've learned to disseminate what he responds with and pick out the gems, because there's always some gems there. You've got to put up with all the add-ons, because it's part of the context. It gives you the better context. They're not wasted. If you wanted a short answer and you didn't get one, you should have specified that at the beginning. It's always a good idea to say, can you summarize this in 1 or 2 sentences, if that's what you're after. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself open to somebody like Barry or Sam to give you a detailed explanation that goes into some depth in the topic, because these people have the knowledge and the experience in dealing with these situations. It's exactly the things we're discussing: collaboration and trust and integrity. Over.
Alex, Stacy, I like this this little turn in the conversation, because to me it goes back to this other theme, which is communication and collaboration are skill sets. And if we recognize there are certain skills in that, say, for example, let me offer something that's 20 seconds that more or less responds to the point, and then see if there's a pull for more detail. I don't always do that, but I'm just saying I could do that, right? So that could cut down on the length of some of these rants, okay? So that's something if I were more aware, I would actually offer more. And this one here is already more than 20 seconds, okay? So I'm just saying, if we recognize that collaboration, communication is a set of skills, might we want to identify, foster, learn, master some of those skills? Or is it just that, hey, we were born, we have mouths, we have ears, blammo, we're already collectively intelligent? I don't think that's the case. I think we haven't yet identified and appreciated and mastered the skills required for collective intelligence. That, to me, is why barn raising exists. That's really my focus. If a barn gets created, great. But I think that in the process of trying to create a barn, these issues arise. And that's why I'm really here every Saturday. Over.
To something that Joshua said earlier on the call, though, some of us will want to do that. But for some of us, we won't want to do that. And that doesn't mean we still don't want to be in the room, because maybe we can get something else from listening to the conversation.
Right. I said that's why I'm here.
Okay.
Just to respond a bit to Alex, you know, when you ask a question, you could say, just give me the title of the Wikipedia article I should read, or just give me the 5 words that I should put into a Google search to find the relevant links, or just give me the first paragraph of the Wikipedia article, or let's dive into the whole article. We have an hour to spend, two of us, each of us have 30 minutes to dive deep. So I think part of it is saying, how much information do you want now? Do you want the pointer to the information? Do you want the lead paragraph, or do you want the information delivered, in its near entirety?
You heard earlier on the call, I said, I would like a 1-sentence answer to this.
I've got an image behind me. It's called the cake. And you can see a small segment called critical thinkers. And you can't see what it says on the big segment. And the big segment says spiritual thinkers. So that's your target market. If you're trying to get the world combined and united, the target market's that big piece of cake. Over. Oh, and the small bit. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on to what you're saying is we can talk about the things that we know and share that with each other, or we can explore and go on a journey together, which is why I love being here at GCC. I feel it's more of the latter, the journey, where we're exploring the global challenges that we don't know. And that will never end. I hope we don't stop exploring. I hope it continues to grow. And I like that a lot, Alex. Thank you for putting a visual to the exploration that we're doing here. And we will run out of things that we know, but as a group, we can't, because we're always sharing from each other. And with that, I'm complete.
Although at some point I would like to see fewer people die of poverty.
And of wars.
And I would like to see people stop being exploited. I came here to GCC because of the continent of Africa being lifted up in 2015 and the exploitation of the African continent. And it's just growing in the last 7 years. There's a real, I saw an article about Goldman Sachs executives leaving Goldman Sachs to go start funding over in Africa because they see the opportunities there more than in other Western cultures to make a lot of money. And they're a company that likes to make a lot of money.
Yep.
Yep. There's a 5-sided building in Washington, and it's where all the money goes. It's a black hole.
Not where all the money goes.
Half
But,
of
yeah,
it.
a little
About
bit,
half
a little bit's retained for education and healthcare.
You guys would be surprised that the budget for the Pentagon is only a small fraction of the black budget.
Of the which budget?
The black budget. The stuff
Black
that
budget.
Congress has no visibility on.
Well, there was a report in September 10th, 2000 that said that there was $3 trillion missing, and all the information was in a place in the Pentagon and in Building 7 that just kind of blew up the next day, which reminds me a little bit of a lady that whistleblowed for Facebook, and then the next day they went offline for a little bit. Not putting a conspiracy theory, but
Correlation is not causation.
it is not. But $3 trillion
But
is a
conspiracy
lot of
theories are
money.
fun.
But that
I mean, by
money
the way,
was,
I don't consider those necessarily conspiracy theories. I think, where there is some, anomalies that are worth pursuing, it's worth asking the questions. And an easy way for the establishment, quote unquote, to shut it down is to say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. That's a label that actually is now taken as a pejorative. And over decades and decades, many of these things have actually been shown to be true. So I don't have the same negative implication to conspiracy theorists as most of the quote unquote, media pundits claim. I think they just want to shut down avenues of inquiry.
I was just going to share, I talked to my neighbor yesterday, and he said that he was just in Texas. He has a house in Corpus Christi, and the gas prices there were, I think, $2.36.
That's
and
where gas is
in
produced.
Yeah, so gas in California is $4.27 right now for unleaded. And that is the state of California, is we overcharge for that and use that money for a multitude of things. We have amazing highway systems. We have so much that money is used for. And it's very different, the state of California, than other states in the United States, but the taxes are ridiculously high. I just paid property taxes. I mean, these things are really, really high here in California, as opposed to, like you said, where Texas produces a lot of oil. But how we budget and allocate monies throughout the world and throughout these states, my hope for global governance, at least for the nation that I'm in, is that we separate America from 50 states into cantons and regions, so that we have regions for the climate change that's going on. There's an abundance of water on the East Coast, and we have no water in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, California. These regional governance systems would be a lot more effective than this. We sort of just didn't mean to create 50 states. We didn't mean to annex Hawaii and Alaska, and it just sort of happened, but it wasn't thought out in terms of the last 50 years of what the actual needs of the nation are, and what minerals and resources and also human capital that's being used in states like South Dakota. There's very few people, but there's an incredible abundance of land. And so I just hope that we stop doing the old systems and do things that actually help and benefit the regions by governing in a way that can be governed. I mean, if a few of these states grouped together, they could do some amazing things and share resources. But anyway, that's my own ask for this nation. And I hope the same thing happens globally with watching the Brexit of England leaving the European Union. I don't see how that benefits England in the long term. But anyway, I digress. Those are the global governance challenges that I'd like to get to here in these conversations with all the intelligence in the room.
Alex? Thanks,
This-
Josh. Alex, and then I just want to remind people it's almost top of the hour, so inviting checkout if people want to do so.
I forgot what I was going to mention, but Josh brought something up about the water crisis, and there's a technology available now called solar energy, and these machines that desalinate salt water, they desalinate ocean water into fresh water. You can power them with solar panels all along the coast of California, all along the coast of any country. And these solar panels are not like the typical ones that take up lots of space. They're convex, concave mirrors that concentrate the solar energy into one spot and generate steam. The steam drives the generator. It's like a powerful free energy machine, almost. After 6 months of operation, you've covered the cost of the equipment. So you've got your water problem solved right there. Start investing in these desalinators now, because the cost of water is only going to continue to skyrocket. I think if we got a global enterprise together to buy the factory in China that makes these desalinators, bingo, you'd have people lining up to buy them. Over.
So what does that do to the marine life?
You take the salt water out of the ocean and turn it into fresh water.
Oh, you're taking it out? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Leave the fish in the sea.
No, I didn't realize that you take
Leave the
water.
salt in the ocean.
Got it.
But you do take some of the plankton out of the seawater because it gets sucked in with the intake.
Anyway, just a little observation. I know Josh was talking about the quality of roads in California. One of the stark, impactful observations I made when I moved up here in 2016 was I was amazed how well the roads were maintained here in Washington compared to what I knew in California. I mean, it's just amazing.
They don't have much traffic though.
Doesn't matter what the reason is, okay? The roads are in much better condition than the roads in California. So no, I've not actually driven over a pothole, I think in the last, maybe 3 or 4 potholes in the last 5 years, literally.
Nice.
As opposed to when I was in California driving, in San Jose and the Bay Area, Saratoga, San Mateo, San Francisco, potholes are almost a daily occurrence. So it is up to the region how they prioritize. Now, on the other hand, we have a serious homeless problem here in Seattle. Serious. This is one of the worst I've ever seen. I didn't see that in San Jose. It may be elsewhere. But these tent cities are sad. Anyway, my checkout is, I would like this to be one of an ongoing, not every Saturday, but an ongoing thread of conversation around behavior, thinking, emotions, triggers, groups, rational thought, critical thinking, systemic thinking. That set of topics, to me, is foundational in barn raising. And I know it flies against the face of some, thought that's been expressed elsewhere. I think most notably unblocking. And I know that, which is why I sometimes go to unblocking and bring it up there. But, I do, hopefully to a non-irritating extent, although I'm sure I've crossed the line at times. Okay. But these are very important issues to me. And these are very important issues that I think help us get towards collective intelligence. Over.
Why do you think that that topic is not of interest in unblocking? I'm confused.
I think it is of interest. That's why I bring it
Oh.
there. But I get
Oh.
a very strong pushback on this.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Almost always. I get a very strong pushback on this. I mean, if you want me to explain, I can explain, but I think most people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I would just say real quickly, Alex, I would just say, I wish there were a whole nother call just for this. Then you know what the conversation is going to be. And if you're not interested, you don't show up.
I got a funny kind of response from a girl here in Australia who runs a environmental organisation. And
You
I was
mean a
talking,
woman?
yeah, a woman. Well, in this case, she's a trans. But I was talking about the effect that is going to occur from global warming if we don't get solar shades in orbit above the poles to bring down the temperature of the North and South Pole by blocking energy from the sun. And she said, who's going to pay for those? And I was thinking, well, if we don't do it, we know who's going to pay. We're all going to pay. Over.
I'll just close by reminding what I think everybody here probably already knows, that on the topic of metacognition and the interplay of emotions and learning, my 35 years of research on the subject is all summarized in one web page, which is up on Google Sites. And if you haven't reviewed it and want to, just ask me and I'll give you the link.
So Stacy, I just wrote in the group that set of words that I use to do the checkout. And I actually do believe that that is how I think of unblocking. Okay, so that's what I try to bring to unblocking. So whenever I'm participating in this way. And I just thought I'd do it occasionally here also, because it's a different group of people with different assumptions about what we're talking about. So I like to try that experiment. Over.
Well, I love the topic. I also, when Josh was talking, I just thought it would be really interesting to be able to, as far as the gas prices and then what those taxes get used for, it would be nice to see the whole picture so that you really see what the cost is. Because if you're getting something, yeah. But that's for you computer people to figure out how to show me.
Well, I'd love to see where those $3 trillion went, or the 21 trillion, because the number I've heard is actually much bigger.
So I just want to push for 1 minute. I would really more focus on like something like gas or something that's happening in the moment that doesn't bring us to a place of blame immediately, but that maybe could be used to engage civilians in the area, because then they see, and it's no more like, it's your fault, it's your fault. It's like, look, this is what we have, this is what we get, so here's the real cost. Now, how do we want to play with the numbers?
So if it's useful, I last loaded up here at 347 per gallon up here in where I
That's
am.
about, well, that's about what I am here too. I just want to say, it's really amazing though, because as much as one gas station's 347, there's another one that I can go to that's 309. And that's like a big, I mean, close, I'm within miles. That's a really big discrepancy that I've been wondering about.
Oh yeah, a
They
few
last
miles
got
away.
filled up.
Say it again.
When they last got their main tank filled up.
No, it's been ongoing where there's like a 40-cent difference. And I've been thinking, how are they able to do that?
Contracts, maybe?
Brand. I know
Long-term
Shell is always
contracts.
much more than Arco, for example. Yeah, I mean, 20 miles away, there's another place selling it like what, $4. So that's like 50-cent difference minimum.
Did anybody see the theme after Facebook went down? And it was a picture of an angry looking Mark Zuckerberg pointing at the camera, and he's saying, okay, now you behave, please, or I'll do it again. I'll shut it down again if you don't behave. And then there's the problem with the gas. I've noticed a theme happening in Facebook and other groups of people posting this anonymous message saying that there's an enormous economic crash about to descend on the world's economies, major economies, and it's going to be more severe than the Great Depression. So that's a problem. But you know, these things come and go. Over.
I'm just going to check out and say thank you, everyone. She's starting to get a little fussy, but she's enjoying looking at everyone, but I can tell she's about to lose it. So thank you for a great conversation today. Want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And
Have a great day. Cheers.
Alex, people have always made money on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Buddy.
Kayla.
Hi.
Hello.
I wasn't present for the last 15 minutes, so I'm not sure what you guys are talking about, but are we doing checkouts or is there a
Okay, I'm
question?
going to take that personally, Kayla.
I know. Well, yeah, you know, I'm at a good point right now where I'm actually caught up on a lot of things. So now I think I'm going to peruse through my kitchen and look to see what I'm going to cook this week. Yes, and then binge watch a bunch of stupid, you know, things on television.
Anything good that you've been binge watched?
I know what she's been watching. I read her.
Yes, I've been watching Squid Games. Very
I heard about that yesterday.
yeah, it's very disturbing, but from an artist standpoint, it's very well done, very well written. I really hope that Hollywood doesn't screw it up, you know, because Hollywood has a tendency to try to remake another person's, you know, another country's film, and they screw it up, and it's awful. And I just wish they would stay away from it. So I hope they keep this Korean because it's brilliant, it's beautiful, it's wonderfully written, but it's very disturbing.
You know, MGM and some of the other big box office names, they got people who go out in the community and research what people are doing, what do they want, so they can put that in the movie. What is trending in the community, and if it's something dark and sinister, that's what we'll get at the box office.
You know, on that note too, I know this is terrible, but I do let my children watch. I do let my children watch Squid Games, and yes, it's bad. But you know, they're just as interested in another country's, you know, form of entertainment as they are watching things in English. And it started it had me thinking of different scenarios with children. They obviously don't grow up with all of these biases, and they don't grow up racist or anything like that. Actually, they grow up with this, very cool curiosity about the rest of the world. And yeah, may sound funny, like, ha, they talk funny. But it's true. I mean, we all talk funny, just like taking it from different perspectives. So that got me thinking a lot yesterday when my sons became extremely engrossed in this film. They didn't even notice that they're speaking Korean, and some of the characters are weird, or they're eating strange food or doing strange games. They were just very interested in general. And I enjoyed today's topic. Anything about kids is always good. Anyway, I gotta go before I start rambling. Bye.
I know nothing about Squid Games. I've not watched it. I've not heard anything about it. So I'm curious now.
Yeah, I get totally different recommendations on Netflix than my friends do. Like, I had never heard of Squid Games, but I try to stay with like more upbeat, positive.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
I just wanted to see what they were watching. So,
Alex, are you waving? Alex is gone. My daughter, my 18-year-old daughter, watches a lot of Japanese anime on my Netflix account. So I get a lot of Japanese anime recommended and pushed at me. I don't know if that happens to the rest of you, but half of my
Not to me.
recommendations are Japanese anime.
Not to me.
Yeah. So they definitely personalize those recommendations, and they've been leveraging those $100,000 grants or competitions they've been setting up.
Who's been setting up? Like, I mean,
I
on
think it's
which?
Netflix. I think Netflix has been setting up regular annual competitions on people to improve these recommendation algorithms.
Oh,
Improve.
You can
interesting.
sign into Netflix by individual members of the family so that each member of the family has their own profile.
Yep. Yeah, my daughter and I don't do that. So she sees what I watch, I see what she watches. Same thing on Spotify. She uses my Spotify account. So I get all of this stuff going all the way back to her middle school years with Katy Perry, and so I get a lot of those playlists, as well. And then she hears my classical and jazz playlists. But that actually has good benefits. She actually loves violin music now.
Yeah,
She
cross
loves
culture.
listening to really cool violin compositions and performances.
Multiculturalism, cross-cultural influence.
And then I get to come across groups like Penguins Playing Ping Pong, group I've never heard of before.
What's the name of a group? Okay.
Yeah, it's the name of a group, yes.
Band names are really weird.
Whatever that gets attention, I guess.
Anyway, I'm glad it was brought up, that whole thing about Facebook, because I said to somebody, privately, I said, do you think this could have anything to do with the whistleblower report yesterday? They were like, no. And they made me feel like I was some crazy conspiracy theorist, but it made sense to me.
I actually don't think it does make sense.
Yeah, it was just
it hurt Facebook tremendously.
So
their own employees could not get in to work.
right.
They lost millions of dollars per second or per hour or whatever, and their customers lost lots of money.
But
So
could it have been sabotaged purposely just to show how destructive it could be? Because right after, I saw a lot of calls for breaking up Facebook and showing how much power there is in having one company have all that.
No, I don't think they would have done this to themselves. I actually do think
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Facebook did it to themselves. What I'm saying is that the possibility of another actor capitalizing on the whistleblower report.
it always
Yeah,
will. Never
Yeah.
let a good crisis go unused, unleveraged.
That's what
Right?
I'm talking about.
It's classic politics.
Right.
It's classic.
Wait till they make a mistake, then capitalize on it. And eventually they will make mistakes. It was a technical mistake. One little comma or something out of order and a BGP command and the whole thing
It's
falls
stupid.
apart.
You know, that should have been automated and tested. And, you know, I don't know why anything like that would have been manually done.
The
Especially
audit
something like-
program, the audit program missed it. There's an audit program that's supposed to look for those kinds of errors, and the audit program had a hole in it, and it slipped through that hole.
Yeah, well, I'm
But
sure
to
that,
Sam's point, why wouldn't something like that be automated? I mean, like, I don't understand.
exactly. It's symptomatic of bad practices, but not all of us are perfect.
There's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It wasn't broke, but they were, quote, fixing it. They were tuning up the network, and the tune-up just, you know, had a glitch in it.
Got it. Okay. All
It
right.
was a very important aspect of the network.
Exactly. Single point of failure, cascading failure.
It's like, you know, back when we had plain old phone systems, it's like, what would have happened in those days without the internet if everybody all of a sudden lost their phone book, their yellow pages?
Right.
You know,
Well, you knew people's numbers then.
Well,
I knew
phew.
everybody's phone number. Now, when I didn't have my phone, I couldn't even call anybody from somebody else's phone because I didn't know their number.
but you know, there's actually, Barry, you know this, there's a way to cache DNS entries locally, and not
Yes.
everybody takes advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're cached for something like, I don't know, an hour or some amount of time. I
It's
forget
up to the
exactly.
TTL. It's called, you know, it's
Yeah,
cached
time to
up
live.
the TTL.
Yeah, time to live, right. Typically no more than a day, often much less than a day.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about.
What we're
What is
talking
it?
about is if this whole DNS system, it's not DNS, but I'm talking about the DNS system, okay? This lookup table that says, hey, if I really want to go to Facebook and it translates to 14.27.18.48, okay? That translation, okay? That's essentially what the phone book does, right? It takes a person's name, translates it to a phone number. While the DNS takes a company name or a website name and translate to an IP address. That's all.
Okay.
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 And what we're saying is most people can take that value and store it locally, cache it, okay? So that they don't always have to go back because, you know, every day you go to Facebook. So why go and look for Facebook's IP address every day? Why don't you just cache it locally
Oh.
so you don't actually have to make that lookup, okay?
So that's why on my phone during the blackout, I was able to get to Facebook, even though I couldn't comment. Whereas on my desktop, I couldn't get to Facebook at all.
Well, it may have looked like you were at Facebook. What it probably was looking at was the content that was stored on your local
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, it was the last page. It kept presenting the same page and never updating.
Yes.
Got it.
And
Okay.
if I went to Messenger, there was a little red line at the top saying lost connection to internet, but it still presented the page as it
Right.
froze.
You could try to
Way
send
back.
something, but that little circle will never get filled in with
Got
the
it.
delivery notification.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a while to realize how I could detect that it was still down. But it's harder on big networks. Like imagine you live in a small town and there's one bank downtown. If you live in a big metropolitan area, they start opening branch banks out in the suburbs. Well, you want to go to the bank and they want to tell you which is the branch closest to where you are right now. That's what Facebook's DNS has to do. It has to say, where is this person located, and let me direct them to the closest server to their geographic location. And so unlike if you only have one location for your web server, it never changes. But on Facebook, it says, oh, right now, the one that doesn't have a long waiting line is that one over there, send them there. Well, that thing that was trying to direct traffic, that thing went down.
Yeah,
Got it.
that's the border that
The
is
border
in-
gateway protocol, it says, this is the least congested route right now. And so it's trying to manage the route congestion. And most, like my website, there's only one server. So there's no, it's that one or none. Okay? It's the multiple branch office issue, which branch to send them to.
Okay. Well, I hope everybody has a good day.
What's left of it.
We'll probably see you tomorrow.
Oh, on the left coast, there's still much of it left.
That's right.
Okay. All right, guys. It's been
Thanks for
fun.
hosting.
Thanks for participating with this topic. To me, it's an important topic, so thanks
I
for
love the
bearing with it.
topic.
Feel free to dive into it to the whatever graduate level you like. I'll be
No,
there
this is
with.
important, and for us to go through this, I think, to me,
And
this
there's
is
a lot of
not the
math.
same conversation over and over again. Okay,
And there's a lot of math in it, Sam. So you among others would appreciate how it goes deep into the math.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, I'll save it for another
Go
time.
ahead, Stacey. Let me
No,
know
no.
when you're-
I was gonna say, it would be really interesting for me if Sam went into the math and then translated it for me.
I have the same feeling that when I present the math, it's at my level. But if Sam went in and presented the math, I think it would be more at a general level for a more
Yes.
general audience. That's my
It's a
expectation.
com-
He would do a better job.
Yeah, Sam, it's not,
No, I agree. I appreciate that compliment. In fact, I was just thinking that's why eGain has designated me as a technology evangelist, because one of the times my CEO actually told me is, he says, I can talk to business people, I can talk to engineers, and then I can talk to customers and make things understandable to each of those constituents. And
I'm too
he,
often over
complimented me
not
that way.
realizing it.
Yeah. So in fact, thanks for letting me take an opportunity to pat myself on the back. I actually was presenting at one of our user conferences one time, and I forget it was whom, but one of our board members went back to my boss and said, that's a very good way to, present this thing that I was talking about. So I got one of my board members to actually speak to one of my bosses positively when that happened. So I always get anxious though, because I never understand whether or not I'm simplifying it too much or it's still too complicated. That's a fine balance, and you got to really get a sense of your audience to really do that well. So I'm sure I
Sam,
don't
you know the audience better than I do. You know the GCC audience better than I do, because you've been in it for 4 years.
Not necessarily, but it'd be
Trust me,
wonderful
you
to
do.
get a collective view of it, right? Right?
Anyway.
I know certain people, but only in my own way, like many of you know Alex better than I know Alex, even though Alex has been here as long as almost I've been, but I have trouble following Alex quite often. So I always have to pay very, very close attention to really understand Alex sometimes.
Anyway, nice seeing you all.
Okay, thanks a lot. It's good. I always like these 3-person moments, by the way.
I love it, but I would love it more if we said a different recording. And I got water boiling over, so I hear the bumping.
Okay, I'm gonna go make my lemon juice. Okay,
Bye-bye.
ta-ta, TTFN.